Hi, I'm Pam Blizzard from Recovered Peace.
And I'm Lachelle Burkett with Hope Redefined.
And I'm Bonnie Burns of Strong Wives. We're so glad you're joining us.
Welcome to another episode of Hope for Wives. Today, we are beginning a series of discussions around trust. Trust is defined as an assured reliance or firm belief in the reliability, truth, ability, and strength of someone or something. Now, after discovery, typically, a betrayed partner feels a loss of trust in any or all of the following areas: with yourself, your spouse, others around you, and with God. So our first discussion today will revolve around, how do I trust myself again? I trusted him and I was completely wrong. I gaslit myself by tamping down my intuition. So how can I ever trust my own perceptions again? So as we build understanding around this, ladies, I'd love to hear some of your personal experiences with losing trust with yourself.
I remember the thought or cognitive distortion that was rolling around in my head during the initial discovery and trauma was, how could I have not known? How I should have known. There must be something wrong with my ability to perceive reality, because how could I not have known? So I lost the ability to trust my own perceptions and ability to process reality, things that were right in front of me. And hindsight is 2020. Through the past, and so many things started to make sense now, I was really beating myself up for not knowing. And I think that was the first hit to my self-trust.
My self-trust was hit after the second D-Day. I'd always been a very decisive person. I took my time coming to decisions, but I could come to decisions. But after the second D-Day, I had a really hard time making decisions. And I think that was from my lack of trust in myself. Like, well, if I choose this, though, what if this and this and this happens? So if I choose this, but what if this and this happens? It was just an overthinking. And that was from a lack of trust, a loss of trust, because it came out of nowhere for me that time. He was a business travel warrior. I was a single mom most weeks. So I had to pull that decisiveness back in. I had to get back online with some decisiveness. So it wasn't a really long season, but I do remember the struggle. And it really hit me in my identity too, because I had already felt myself as a real independent woman. And that struggle was really confusing.
This is an interesting place for me because I think that trust with myself has always been an issue. Even before betrayal happened in my story. Oftentimes when I have partners who'll ask questions about this, like, how do you restore trust with yourself? I've had to sit back in my own story and think, I'm not really sure I trusted myself even before. And I think a lot of that came from very similar experiences in family of origin, gaslighting, minimization, nothing's ever what it seems, that kind of thing. And so my intuition, I think, was taken from me at a really early age. So the way that I built or created trust was control. So I would control my environment to the best of my ability and almost move into a space of being hypervigilant because I was still trying to find that intuition. So I'm trying to fast forward this to get into betrayal. I think there was moments where I had started to trust myself, but because again, I was so familiar with living in, like Pam uses the words, cognitive distortions of my own and from other people, it was kind of like I could rely on myself, but I may not trust myself. Does that make sense? It's a kind of a delineation there. I was very self-sufficient. I was very reliable for me. I was very responsible, but I did not trust my decision-making. I did not trust the things in front of me. I was constantly in a state of second guessing, always wondering, like you said, the worry, anxiety. I would mull things over consistently in my brain. Oh, I mean, I couldn't even trust that I showed up in a conversation with a grocery store cashier. I would come home and be like, oh my gosh, that was so dumb. Why did I say that? But I will say this, one of the other funny things about self-discovery for me when I thought about this D-Day was there was a pretty consistent phrase that I would go to whenever I would begin to think about the betrayal, I would go to this phrase where I'd say, I have a college degree. Like, I have a college degree. I do not understand how I did not see this coming. I laugh at this all the time. I have no idea how my bachelor's in marketing and communications was supposed to keep me from being betrayed. But really, what I was trying to do, I didn't know it at the time, but in retrospect, what I was trying to do was I was battling the lie that I was stupid. So I would come back and be like, I have a college degree, because that was the only thing I had that felt like it was concrete to say, I'm not stupid. This is happening. I know that's kind of a very rounded way of answering the question of how did I see trust broken or within myself? But those were a lot of ways that I saw it come out. It wasn't just a one and done, but it was a seepage of losing trust with myself.
I had those same thoughts. I'm a smart woman. And I hear other women say this too. How did a smart woman like me get into this situation? And then I'll hear other women list out basically their resume of and we are all very intelligent, accomplished women who have done a lot of different things in our lives. But then to say, but wait a minute, how could this happen to me? This doesn't happen to me. This happens to other people. So there must be something wrong with me. I didn't see it. I should have known. Again, that whole thing. So yes, Lachelle, I hear that constantly. And that self-gaslighting, when your gut's telling you one thing, and that, what's the word, dissonance? Cognitive dissonance, when your gut's telling you one thing, but all that quote evidence is saying something else. It feels horrible. When that happens, it just feels so awful in your body. And so I had to create a story to go with it, to calm my nerves about it. And I gaslit myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so because I did that to myself too, it wasn't just my husband or other people giving me a narrative and that I played a part in it. That's another reason why I didn't trust myself.
So this ties in really well with our next question, which is, how do you identify when you've lost trust with yourself? Or how do you see lack of self-trust in your clients?
Some of the signs of someone who's struggling with self-trust, when I have a client or even a woman in a particular support group that is consistently seeking validation. And P.S., that's the whole point of group and getting into community, is to receive validation. That's one of the benefits of being in community, is to repair and heal trust with self. Because what a woman is doing when she comes into group and she's asking questions like, well, how did you do this? Or is this the right way to do this? Or so on and so forth. It's a good indicator for us as a group facilitator or coach. This woman is struggling with trusting herself. She's experiencing something and she's not sure if she's trying to see if others can tell her if it's right or wrong. That also is a great indicator of saying she's potentially been super minimized in her other relationships, where maybe she has a big emotion and then she's told that's inappropriate. Why are you so mad about this? I'm not doing it anymore. And then she's like, that's right. Maybe I should be better than I am, but it's still hurting. See that wrestle with trusting self, because her emotions, her heart is telling her one thing, but the world around her is telling her she should be showing up differently. And that's the chiseling down of trust with self, right? And intuition. One side note I want to make though, because here's something that I see pretty consistently that gets really confusing for us as we navigate this through the lens of trauma, that for some women choose or have to go into a state of denial. And I want to just speak to that for just a second, because I think it's important for our listeners to hear this, that denial is actually a survival tactic. And I will get a lot of women who, I was thinking about how I was just talking about my education and the way that I was trying to show up in the world. And then there were moments when we are in seasons of denial. Well, oftentimes that is survival. So let me explain what that means. When my husband relapsed and I was home, single mom with 3 kids under 4 years old, it was very difficult for me to navigate my everyday responsibilities as being a mom to young kids and all the things, like even after maybe the fire had gone out and there was just smoldering still happening, it was difficult for me to hold all the responsibilities of that day and then also have this great insight on the health of our marital relationship and how we were going to fix it. In my limited capacity, and we do this unconsciously, in my limited capacity, I had to sort out what's the greatest need here. And the greatest need was my 6-month-old who was colicky, allergic to milk, not doing great with life, right? Like all the things, that was my bigger priority. So yes, there was an element of denial about the toxicity of our relationship or how unhealthy we still were, even though we navigated a relapse. The same can be true when you have women's stories come out after a parent's death or other traumatic event where there's just this big thing in the room. And then you're like, I got to put this on hold, or I just need to deny that it exists right now because I don't have capacity for it. So I bring that in because I want to extend grace. I want you guys to hear that there's grace in that because it is survival. Your brain just, it's not even, for many of us, it's not even choice. It's not like you sat down and were like, golly, what am I going to focus on today? It is literally like your body is like, I cannot survive if I have to hold 2 of these big things. So I'm going to put one down. And it does it for you in your mind. So I think the reason that feels like it connects is because a lot of times I will hear women connect their trust with self and denial. And somehow or another, it messes with them. I can be in denial. It's not a place we want to camp out in. If you know you're in denial, then we got to talk about that, right? Because now we know you're intentionally choosing it. But there is that moment you have that awareness and you're like, oh my gosh, I've been sitting here and I didn't realize it. Well, that was because your brain was taking care of you. So be really nice to it.
And that leads me to a thought. I had a recent conversation. I really feel stuck. And I think she was worried about denial as well. But we started looking at her daily life. And it's exactly what you just described, Lachelle. She doesn't have time to think about recovery. She's so busy with she's got several children, a full-time job, soccer, baseball, all the things, dinners, dogs to the vet, everything. And I said, so we explored how she could start building in some self-care for herself. Just 10 minutes to yourself so you can have a thought just for yourself. You don't even have to think about recovery. But I think re-engaging with yourself helps start to nurture that trust a little bit.
Let me just, this conversation about denial is so important, I think, for all the reasons you both just said. We're also so busy showing up and building trust and maintaining trust with the outside world that we tend to value that higher than trusting ourselves. And it's not even a thought. It's not until somebody talked to me about self-trust. I had never even considered it because I'm just operating as I operate. And I think also because the world, our spouses, demand proof. You're feeling what? Why? Show me what? Show me a smoking gun. And that we can't, the world is asking us to justify why we're feeling what we feel. If you don't have language for that, I felt lost. I didn't know how to justify it. I didn't know how to debate it. I didn't know how to explain it because others were challenging me. That also beat down my self-trust to where maybe I am wrong. Maybe I'm seeing all of this wrong. Shouldn't I have proof? Shouldn't I be able to articulate exactly what I'm feeling and exactly what I need? And I think I'm doing it right, but I'm using some old coping tools and old communication methods that don't work anymore. That eroded my self-trust too. Yes, I also went into denial. One of the biggest questions, how will I ever trust again? Is it even possible to even trust a man after he's betrayed you in this way and he's hurt you and wounded you? This person who was supposed to have my back, how will I ever trust again? And I honestly believe that before we even ask that question, we have to back up the bus and we have to reestablish that trust in ourselves first. And I see trust like a bridge. Jason Martinkus, in his book, Worthy of Her Trust, says that it is the husband's responsibility after betrayal to develop, he uses this analogy of a Lego sculpture. And I took that and I said, no, actually, I think it's a Lego bridge of some small blocks and some big blocks. And it's multiple things that builds trust. But before you can build that trust bridge over to your partner, you need to make sure that your side of the bridge is solid with self-care, your professional recovery team, your group, your values, your boundaries. Maybe you have an exit plan. So that you have to have that solid side of the bridge. Should one of those Lego bricks fall, either a big one or several small ones start to fall, you can run back to your side of the bridge. And before I start to build a bridge over to my partner, I'm going to look at his side of the bridge. Is he taking care of himself? Is he doing his recovery and growing and healing? What are the things that he's doing to keep his side of the bridge healthy and strong before we start to build those bricks towards each other and meet in the middle? And one of those bricks, huge part, and I think we've touched on it, is that gut feeling, that intuition, and learning to trust it, right or wrong, without proof. My feelings are all I need. My emotions, the sensations in my body, that's all the proof I need to run to back over to my side of the bridge. I don't need a smoking gun. And I'm willing to even be wrong. If I think maybe my husband's relapsed, I need to be able to go to my side of the bridge and regroup. And I need to start to trust my intuition and pay attention to it, maybe even journal it, so that I can learn when it's right and when it's wrong.
I think some Christian teaching has made us question our feelings and our gut. Like the heart is wicked above all else, that kind of thing. And I say to that, God gave us our feelings. If we're made in the image of God, He gave us the feelings that He has. So they are valid. Our intuition and our gut is there for a reason. God put it in us so that we can have red flags to keep ourselves safe. So it's okay to trust your gut. I think there is a message out there within Christianity that you can't trust yourself. Well, yes, we're going to get to, in another episode, we're going to talk about trust with God and having that trust in God, but we can also have trust in ourselves. Within us is the Holy Spirit. Within us is the mind of Christ. So we can trust our feelings. Now, do you want to assess them against truth and cognitive distortions like Pam talks about? We do want to do that. But you can trust your gut because God put it there. Not just your physical gut, but your feeling gut.
That same heart, I mean, I don't think it's meant to be taken so literally, so black and white, because that same heart that can deceive us is also the same heart with which we love God and invite the Holy Spirit into. There needs to be some context around that.
Yeah.
Before the brain even registers what the emotion is or what the thing is that's causing it, emotions start in the body at a physical place. And before it even reaches the brain to say, is that a snake or a stick? Our body reacts first. And if we don't trust that and we squelch that, then we lose self-trust.
Well, I also think that's why you see such complication for us as believers to trust that we hear from God, right? Because it's an internal thing. And so if you're consistently told, don't trust the things on the inside, and then all of a sudden you have this encounter with the Holy Spirit, but it's internal. It's not like He didn't come to me in a dream. How do you reconcile that? How do you not miss out on this internal relationship with the Holy Spirit and the stirring and movement in your spirit if everything you're told about on your insides is not good?
Yeah.
It's conflicting.
Yeah.
There's ways to validate your gut, though. And there's ways to validate whether or not you're really hearing from God. You filter it through the Word. You filter it through your faith community that you can trust. Like if you have a spiritual mentor or a friend and getting feedback like that. And I just have these thoughts rolling around like a BB in a boxcar that never leave my head, and I'll turn it back and forth through black and white thinking. But if I can go to the Word and compare what I'm feeling and thinking, what would the Word say about what I'm thinking? What would my faith community tell me about what I'm thinking? And go to a trusted friend and take all of those things together. And that's a skill, probably. Again, that's a skill that you have to develop and be willing to be wrong and learn from it. That's why I'm a big fan of journaling, just without filter, going back to it a day later. It's going to hit me differently a day later. And is it something God would say?
What you're talking about rolls right into our next question, which is, how do you know when you're starting to trust yourself?
For me, and again, I go back to, you'll feel it in your body. If you're checked in with yourself, if you check in with your body, God gives us this incredible nervous system to tell us. That's why we have these phrases like, you'll feel it in your gut, right? Or you're choked up. And if you feel it in your body and you feel uncomfortable, or if you feel comfortable, you feel confident, then you know you're beginning to trust yourself. If I make a decision and I speak it and I still feel confident, I still may be struggling with some feelings about other people's acceptance of what I'm saying. But if I sit with it with myself and my own authority and autonomy, that it's either between me and God, or God saying, listen, this is between you and yourself, and really tune into that self check-in, self-awareness, I think that's where we can also learn, does this feel true for me?
The question, how do you know when you're starting to trust yourself? I definitely see that, what Bonnie was saying about the ability to make decisions and feel like there's a sense of confidence to it. It might be scary, but she can still move through and do the hard thing. The other thing I think about is there is a moment in time where you start to heal, and the way you take in other people's opinions, thoughts, questions, all that shifts when you start to trust yourself. It's like it goes from, tell me what I need to do because I have no idea, to, thank you so much for that information. I'm going to consider that. And I think that's when you start to know my stuff within me is starting to heal. And I know that for me, I will receive information from someone now and feel like I can stand in that. Thank you so much. I will definitely consider that. And I take that to the Lord, and I go back and I go, hey, am I missing this? Is it, I certainly can be disconnected from myself and I'm just not showing up the way that I want to. So Holy Spirit, can you offer some leadership, guidance, conviction, whatever that looks like here? But I think that's how a woman, like if I'm trying to boil it down, it goes from a place of being like, someone put an oxygen mask on my face, to being able to put it on yourself and then say to people around you, thank you so much for your input. It doesn't wall you off from them, but it certainly gives you a sense of within you.
I think that's a good contrast and comparison. Going from wanting other people's input and wanting other people either to decide for you or give you tons of input and encouragement to go in a certain direction, versus saying, this is what I'm going to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're taking your agency back. So for a while you gave it away. What do you think? Okay, that's what I'm going to do. But your agency, which is your personal empowerment to make your own decisions and be in charge of your own life, comes back to you. So yeah, it's beautiful.
Which, by the way, can be confused with confidence and boundaries, because, well, it includes it, I guess I should say. But oftentimes you'll see women, like you said, Bonnie, pulling back in, they're reclaiming their agency. And what comes with that is a voice and boundaries and all these things. And so it's important, I think, for us to understand that that's a shift, and that can be met with a lot of opposition.
Yeah.
And people are not going to like that, right?
Yeah.
So that's one of those conversations I'm always having with women when we're talking about establishing, creating boundaries for themselves, and what will your responsive actions be, and so on and so forth. And that's what's coming out of that, is that it is coming it's coming back within themselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. It's being able to bring it back into yourself and stick with your personal standards and your personal values and your ethics and who you are, because really this betrayal robs you of your identity for a while. And
Yeah.
when you get that trust back in yourself, you remember who you are.
Yes.
So now that we've talked about personal agency, I hope that you're feeling some hope. And that's what we want to extend right now. We want to further that conversation. So how can we offer hope to our listeners that it is possible to build or rebuild trust with themselves after betrayal?
I want to provide some encouragement that it's not a feeling. Trusting yourself isn't just an emotion. It's a skill. It's a skill you can learn. There's tools, there's support. We can provide it through groups and coaching and having the right trauma-based therapist. But this is something that you can learn to do. It's not like you either have it or you don't. You can get it.
Mm-hmm. I think that is hopeful, Pam. I think, my brain works in pictures a lot. And I keep thinking about, we're given hand-me-downs. And I usually refer to hand-me-downs as like the things we get from our family of origin. And we need to understand that there is permission and ability to take that hand-me-down to the thrift store and go buy something new. And so I feel the same about that with learning how to build trust with self and discover it. For some, it may be the first time ever. If it's like in my story, if it's been a part of your entire livelihood. So I would say that too. That would be my encouragement, is to know that it can be done and it is worth it. It really does begin to create stabilization for an individual. There's so many benefits to being able to trust your gut and yourself, and it's worth it.
Yeah, so I looked up 1 Corinthians 2:15, which says, "The person with the Spirit makes judgments about all things, but such a person is not subject to merely human judgments, for who has known the mind of the Lord so as to instruct him? But we have the mind of Christ." So I just, again, want to affirm that it's not wrong to have feelings, and you are empowered with the mind of Christ as a believer. And I think that's a good place to start rebuilding trust. Well, ladies, do you have anything else to add before we wrap up? All right. Friends, we thank you for joining us, and we hope to be a bright spot on your recovery journey. If you'd like to leave us a question or comment, please go through the contact button on our website, hopeforwives.com, hopeforwives.com. Also, help a friend by leaving a 5-star review on iTunes so others can find us. And we'll talk to you again in 2 weeks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.